What's up, friends? Welcome back to another episode of the Pack a Day podcast. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. Thanks so much for being here today. We just wrapped up family night, the first family night ever that did not involve either Brett Favre or Aaron Rodgers. Crazy to think about. This, of course, was Jordan Love's first opportunity in front of a live crowd at Lambeau to be the guy as the starting quarterback in Green Bay. There's a lot of positive takeaways. There was a lot of things that certainly need to get cleaned up. There was some really bad music, but let's kick things off right away with some players that were not practicing on the night. The players that were out were David Bakhtiari, Elton Jenkins, Josiah DeGuara, Lou Nichols, Jake Hansen, Eric Stokes, Rashawn Gary, and Grant Dubose. So Dubose, Gary, Stokes, Hansen, DeGuara had all been hurt already, and those were not new injuries. Lou Nichols, we didn't get an update as to exactly what the injury was, but he had dropped out of practice in the previous practice on Thursday. He had taken 2 hits in a row and, kind of went off awkwardly to the sideline. Not sure what it was. It looked more of like a midsection type injury, so we'll have to kind of keep an eye on that, but he was not practicing on Saturday night. Elton Jenkins was illness, so that's great news that it was no, anything else, right? You don't want anything with Elton, but if it's going to be something, you want illness to be what it was. So he should be back sooner rather than later. And then the one that was sort of concerning, when it happened, or at least when we saw that he wasn't practicing, was David Bakhtiari. And you might be like, Andy, how are we at the point where this is concerning? This is like just the normal for David Bakhtiari. Some days he might practice, some days he might not, and that's just what it is, right? But if you remember, on Tuesday he practiced and then he dropped out. Then he didn't practice Wednesday, didn't practice Thursday, and then didn't practice Saturday. And he had sort of been going every other day and had sort of a cadence that he was working through, but he did not practice. And the bigger thing here was earlier in the week when Matt LaFleur was asked about, Bakhtiari practicing this week, they basically said they were working backwards from family night with the intention that they wanted Bakhtiari to be able to practice on family night and then would work his days off based off of that. So the fact that he didn't, that he dropped out of practice in some capacity Tuesday, didn't practice Wednesday, didn't practice Thursday, and then didn't practice at family night certainly gave some cause for concern when it initially happened. Now, Matt LaFleur said after practice that there was no cause for concern, that this is just part of the situation, but basically said that this is sort of what might continue for Bakhtiari through the course of this season. And when we talked about, could a Yosh Nijman trade make sense? And we've talked about as well in the past, could a David Bakhtiari trade make sense? This is why it's so complicated and so hard, right? It's just so hard. And I'm not saying it's hard to trust David Bakhtiari. It's just hard to trust David Bakhtiari's knee, right? And we just don't know. And Green Bay certainly doesn't know like what that knee is going to feel like or be like on any given moment. And Bakhtiari certainly doesn't have a feel for that either. So the hope, of course, is that regardless of practice situations, that once game days start, he's going to be able to play on Sundays, Mondays, Thursdays, whenever they're playing. But remember, and I'll go back to this last year. Remember, he had started or like missed the first couple games of the year. Then he had played. He later in the year had the appendectomy. But there had been one game last year, and forgive me for not knowing exactly which one it was. It might have been the international game, but I could easily be wrong on that. Don't quote me on it. But there was a game last year where he just woke up like on that day and just couldn't go. And like that was sort of the new normal for Bakhtiari of just like there might be a week where you're expecting him to play and he just might not be able to go. So that is going to play a huge factor into this season and, what they ultimately want to do on the offensive line. And I think because of that, they're going to continue to have to cross-train some players. I think Zach Tom, Yosh Nijman, all those guys are going to have to be ready to certainly play some offensive tackle when needed. One of those guys clearly going to be the starter as well. But Elton Jenkins might have to still kick out there. Who knows? But this is sort of the new normal for David Bakhtiari. And it might amount to nothing, right? Maybe he's back practicing next week against Cincinnati and he plays he's not going to play in the preseason game, but he plays in the regular season and he plays 16 out of 17 games and it's much ado about nothing, right? But it does seem like this is going to be a continued issue and you just don't know what it's going to ultimately be for Bakhtiari. But he misses and that was one of the big absences. But the big thing to take away is that Matt LaFleur said there's no cause for concern at this point, and I think that's good news and hopefully we can take his word for it at this point with Bakhtiari. But you just never know with David and that knee and how it's flared up in the past. So we'll kind of keep an eye on that. Starting offensive line with Bakhtiari and Jenkins out was Yosh Nijman at left tackle, Royce Newman at left guard, Josh Myers at center, John Runyon Jr. at right guard, and then Zach Tom at right tackle. The starting defense and offense were basically the same as normal outside of that offensive line for the offense. On defense, it was Justin Hollins with the starters opposite Preston Smith, and it was Jonathan Owens once again getting the start opposite Darnell Savage with the starters on defense. All right, that sort of gets some of the logistics out of the way. Let's jump into talking about Jordan Love and the rest of this team and how they performed on family night. So Jordan Love ended the day 11 of 18. I know some people in the press box had him at 11 of 19. The differentiator there is there was a play in the red zone where he threw to Jaden Reed, and Jaden Reed, he went to the ground. The ref in the back of the end zone called it incomplete. On the replay, it certainly looked like he might have come down with the catch. It was really tough to tell, but regardless, there was a holding penalty on the defense in the play, which would have negated the play. Now, I will say usually in training camp, regardless of what happens, like if it would have been a sack on the play, but Jordan throws it anyway, we usually have been sort of counting that as a completion. If there's a penalty, we've usually been counting it as a completion or incompletion. So if you want to go 11 of 19, you certainly could. I couldn't even, I think the hard part is you couldn't really tell if it was a catch or not. And then you had the penalty. So I'm just sort of erasing that one from the books. I'm going 11 of 18 on the day. But basically, his night was a microcosm of the first 3 days that he had of practice. So if you remember, day one of practice was a really tough day where he had 4 opportunities down the field and missed all 4 of them. Day 2 of practice was some incompletions and inconsistencies, but he had sort of some easy completions mixed in with a couple of really nice throws. And then day 3 of practice was not including the walkthrough. The day 3 of competitive practice on that Saturday was what a lot of people argued was his best day as a quarterback in Green Bay. And that's basically how this day went. The first portion of this practice, he went 1 for 5. The second portion, he had a lot of easy completions or just stuff that, didn't amount to much, but he did have one really impressive throw to Jaden Reed over the middle of the field. That was kind of like that day 2 of practice. And then the third part of practice, he went 5 for 5 to end the day, including all extremely nice completions and leading a 2-minute drill for a touchdown with ease, with extreme ease. So it was a little bit of everything. And just like that first day of practice, where you could tell it was Jordan's first day and he was taking over, new starting quarterback, everything, and you could tell he was just a little bit amped up and a few jitters and things like that. I think that was the exact same thing that sort of happened in the first part of this practice, and Matt LaFleur mentioned that after as well. And you could just tell he was maybe a little bit too amped up and he missed some throws that he shouldn't have missed and quite frankly can't miss. And we'll go over that in just a moment. But that's how the day was. If you kind of split it into 3 sections, a really rough start, 1 for 5. The middle part mostly nondescript with a really great throw to Jaden Reed mixed in. And then the last part, the 2-minute drill specifically, where he was fantastic and again led an easy touchdown drive. So let's start with the 1 for 5 to begin practice. All right. So on the very first play, he's thrown a sort of a deep route to Romeo Doubs. The safety's on his way over. Jair Alexander's in coverage. It was, in my opinion, a bit underthrown, but it was contested. Romeo Doubs didn't really read it very well, in my opinion, either. It ended up falling incomplete past Romeo Doubs, even though it was underthrown. It was just a sort of a weird play. And just chalk it up to good coverage by Jair. Maybe not the best ball. Maybe not the best read by Doubs. I don't know. It was just sort of, whatever. Whatever you want to call it. It was just disjointed. So that was throw number 1. Number 2, they come back to Romeo Doubs, who beats Jair easily on the play, has about 3 yards of separation, great route by Romeo, and Love overcooks it and throws it, about 3 yards past Romeo. Should have been a easy big-time throw, big-time completion. Those are the plays that Jordan cannot miss, and that's been Jordan's biggest issue so far, is hitting consistently on some of those big plays down the field. He's certainly hit on some of them, but there's been a lot more opportunity there, and it's just been a little bit inconsistent from Jordan. The third play from Jordan was a tight end screen to Luke Musgrave. Easy throw. The defense was all over it. Musgrave somehow got back to the line of scrimmage. It ended up in a 0-yard completion. Then Musgrave is coming on a crosser over the middle. Musgrave had separation, had speed and build up, and was ready for a completion. And somehow Love just completely missed him. It looked like it was high and wide on the play. So that was another poor throw. And then on the fifth play, you had Musgrave deep over the middle. It looked like some sort of seam route. Now, he did have to kind of get it over and under in between the safety and the linebacker. It's not the easiest throw in the world, but he overthrew it, overcooked it again, and it could have been a completion, and it was not. And that's another big play waiting to happen over the middle of the field. So started 1 for 5 with multiple misses, including the miss to Dobbs, which should have been a big completion, the crosser to Musgrave over the middle, and then the deep throw to Musgrave, which could have been a big play as well. So not obviously a great start. And like I said, then the middle was, not super, there's no big takeaways from it. Basically, there were a couple throwaways. There's a couple easy completions, couple incompletions, but it was mostly nondescript. And then, like I said, there was the gorgeous play to Jayden Reed mixed in. So here was the 2-minute drill at the end of practice. All right. So on the very first play, you've got Musgrave once again going over the middle, and very similar to the one that he missed to Musgrave and overthrew it. This time he hits Musgrave. Musgrave had miles of separation on the play, just used his great speed to get in the middle of the field. Love hits him. It ends up being a 30-yard completion. Then they come back to Christian Watson on a quick in-breaking route. He hits him on a slant in stride. It ends up going for 20 yards on that completion. They do a quick handoff inside for about 4 yards. And then on a 9 route, you've got Christian Watson one-on-one with Corey Ballantyne. Love puts it up in a place where Watson had the opportunity to go up and get it. Was a good throw, but an even better catch, contested by Ballantyne. I think Ballantyne probably should have done a little bit better at the catch point, but credit to Christian Watson, who goes up, skies, gets the pass, and makes a gorgeous reception for a touchdown in a beautiful 2-minute drive for an offense, a number one offense that has really, really struggled in those situations and opportunities so far. Now, to be fair, on the very first play of that 2-minute drive, there was a botched snap between Josh Myers and Jordan Love, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit more in just a moment. But that potentially could have ended that drive before it even started. They could have just awarded it to the defense at that point. They didn't. They basically started it over, and then they had the gorgeous 2-minute drive, right? So that's what his day was. In the last 5 plays for Jordan Love, when he was 5 for 5, was a nice slant to Romeo Dobbs on a nice completion, a big time dime to Jayden Reed for about 20 yards ish, and then the big play to Musgrave, the Watson slant, and then the Watson touchdown. So 5 for 5 to end the day. And I will say this once again, even on the incompletions, right, where he was inaccurate and needed to throw better passes, outside of maybe the first throw where it was kind of, like I said, disjointed, and I don't know, maybe he could have gone in a different direction. I once again love Jordan Love's decision making. He didn't put the ball in harm's way. And I thought he had a very nice day of processing and, knowing where to go with the football. It was 11 of 18, 11 of 19, whatever you want to call it. But if he hits the throws from an accuracy standpoint, you're talking about there was 3 misses or at least 2 misses, probably another one mixed in. You're probably talking about a 14 of 18 day with multiple touchdowns and multiple explosive plays. So the going through the progressions, the reads, the knowing where to go with the football, the mental processing, the command of the offense, all of that has remained really, really good. The not putting the ball in harm's way has remained very, very good. It's just the consistency and the accuracy for Jordan, specifically down the field. He's had a couple throws overall in training camp and that have just gone a little bit wide on some little swing passes and things like that. But overall, it's been the throws down the field that's need a little bit of work. And then other times you hear the Christian Watson where if it's an eighth of an inch or an eighth of a second later or sooner, it's not going to be there, where he hits who was it? Samori Toure on the out and up, where it was a gorgeous throw where, Jayden Reed went on and on about how perfect of a throw that was. So he's had some beyond perfect throws down the field, but that's where the inconsistency has been. So this has sort of been a very similar night to, what we've seen from Jordan so far in training camp, where you end up around 50% completion percentage again with very good reads, good decision making, not any major mistakes, but a couple throws that you'd like to have back, and you just want to see that accuracy come up a little bit. And if it does, you're talking about going from an average night with some average completion percentage to a really big night with great decision making, big time throws, big time plays, etc. So it just needs to be a little bit more crisp, a little bit more accurate. If he gets there, look out. Everything's been good elsewhere with his process, but it just needs to be a little bit more accurate. And again, it's been very reminiscent of what we've seen from Jordan Love in training camp so far. So now the big question is going to be, like, I would argue like this is phase one. Like this is sort of the first phase of, the offseason of training camp, right? And now the second phase will be the lead up to and the Bengals game. The third phase will be, the Patriots, joint practices, and then so on and so forth. So I think there's like 4 phases, what I would consider for training camp for Jordan. This is phase one. It's better than I expected. You still have those inconsistencies and inaccuracies at times that need to get cleaned up. If you can get that cleaned up, then we're talking about a quarterback that's really headed in the right direction. If he can't get that cleaned up, then we're talking about a quarterback that is going to have to really work on his accuracy and find a way to be a bit more consistent. So overall, still would say that Jordan is a net positive so far at camp up until this point. The offense still a little bit disjointed at times, but the opportunities are there and it just needs to be a little bit more crisp. And if it becomes a little bit more crisp, like I said, then you can start looking out for what Jordan and this offense can ultimately do. All right, the player of the day and the story of the day was Anders Carlson. And unlike all the other days, where it was really for all the wrong reasons, it was for all the right reasons on this one. Now, I put Anders on the day as 9 of 9. And you could have argued that it was 8 of 8. You could have argued that it was 8 of 9. You could have argued that it was 9 of, you could have gone in a couple different directions. So here's what I had for him on the day. His first kick that he made was an extra point in the pregame warmups. It was like a 33 yarder. And he made that in warmups. There was no real rush on the play. So there was some debate up in the press box as to, do you count that one? Do you not count that one? I think Huber counted it. I think Schneidman didn't. I counted it. And I thought Bill Huber brought up a great point of like, if he would have missed it, we would have talked about it and we would have counted him 0 for 1 on the day, right? So he made it. We counted it. If you don't want to count that kick, that because there was no rush on the play, so be it. But he made that first kick in pregame. Then he had a 40-yard field goal he made, a 44-yarder he made, a 49-yarder he made, a 43-yarder that he made, a 45-yarder that he made. And then he had I think it was probably around a high 40s or low 50s kick where there was an absolute atrocious snap that ended up in a very bad hold. And it should have never been kicked in the first place, meaning the holder should have aborted it and just, try to roll out and find something downfield. The timing was completely off. Anders had 0% opportunity to make that kick. He somehow got a foot on it. I don't even know how. And it ended up going into the end zone still from again, 50 plus yards out is what I believe it was. I have no idea how he even got it that far based on what happened up until that point. That one was not on Anders at all. So I know if you want to count from a team standpoint, if you're grading the entire process, it was a miss. The hold was bad off of a very bad snap. And Anders technically kicked it. I'm not holding that against Anders on the day at all. So then after that, he had a 51-yarder, a 53-yarder, and then as the number 2s finished their 2-minute drill, there was an opportunity, tie game, 51-yard field goal for the win, and he absolutely crushed that one as well. So I put him, if you include the extra point, in pregame, and if you exclude the botched hold / snap, etc., to me, he was 9 of 9 on the day. If you are not taking the extra point and you are counting the bad hold, snap, etc. against him, then he's 8 of 9 on the day. So it's in the eye of the beholder of what you want to ultimately give him, but I'm going 9 for 9. And this was exactly what Anders Carlson needed. He needed a bounce back performance. And to be fair, as long as you don't count the one that was the botched hold and snap, he is now perfect all-time at Lambeau Field, which is going to be an important place for him to kick moving forward. So it was a great story on the night because he really needed a day like that. The consistency was great to see. We'll see what that amounts to moving forward, but that was a night that he needed and a very impressive performance from the rookie kicker. Some of my other players of the night, I thought the young defensive linemen were fantastic. Carl Brooks had 2 or 3 pressures again. Colby Wooden had 2 pressures again. Jonathan Ford had his best night. He had 2 big pressures in the backfield. I think at least one of them certainly would have been a sack. And I think Wooden had at least 2 sacks. I think Brooks would have probably had at least a sack or 2, including in those pressures. Devontae Wyatt had a really nice day. He absolutely ran over and annihilated Royce Newman on a play. So those young defensive linemen really making a name for themselves. I asked Matt LaFleur about Carl Brooks and Colby Wooden after practice, and he said that they're counting on those guys to play snaps this year. And I think that's telling, right? You can basically chalk up Colby Wooden and Carl Brooks for 53-man roster spots right now. Not only are they making the team, it sounds like the team is very much expecting them to play significant snaps. And he said minutes and then corrected it to snaps. But you get the point. They've been really, really good. Now, Carl did get washed out on one running play. And I think it was Royce Newman, if I remember correctly. But outside of that, this is a player that continues to get penetration into the backfield every single day. And like I said, there were 2 or 3 more plays. And Wooden had a couple really nice ones as well. As I mentioned, Ford did, Wyatt did. So those young defensive linemen continuing to show up day in and day out and really start making a name for themselves. The tight ends as well, and specifically Tucker Kraft, Luke Musgrave, and Tyler Davis. There were a couple snafus. I think Tyler Davis had a false start and a couple things like that. But overall, the one-on-ones were really good. The team activities were really good. Tucker Kraft had a phenomenal contested catch in the end zone for a touchdown. Luke Musgrave on that first drive, as I mentioned, they did the tight end screen to him. Then they did the crosser over the middle that Love missed, but Musgrave opened with his speed on the crosser. And then he had the deep seam route where he's open there too, and unfortunately Love missed that one. Then later in the 2-minute drill, Musgrave catches the big seam play, goes for 30 plus yards. He is becoming a matchup nightmare and somebody that Matt LaFleur, I can promise you, is going to look to continue to get mismatches on. There's also on the play to Christian Watson for the touchdown at the end, the 2 safeties over the middle. Luke Musgrave's running that seam route again. Both safeties converge on Luke Musgrave. It leaves Christian Watson one-on-one with Corey Ballantyne, and that is going to do wonders for those wide receivers on the outside if Luke Musgrave continues to get all that respect over the middle of the field running those seam routes. So he had a really nice day. And then Tyler Davis, he had a couple nice catches. And then he also, I think he had a one-hander in the end zone too in one-on-ones, but he had some really nice blocks. And credit Tucker Kraft, who had a couple really nice blocks on the day. That it was his best day blocking by far. Luke Musgrave had a really nice block on a play. Those tight ends are coming around nicely, and that was Tucker Kraft's best day by far. Contested catches. He had a couple other catches in team activities, 2 really nice blocks. He's coming around as well. This is a fun group of tight ends, and Tyler Davis is taking a step. Those guys are going to make the team. Tyler Davis, one of the most integral players on the special teams as well. So really nice day for the young tight ends. And then it's so easy to forget about Christian Watson, but he had a couple really nice plays. The slant that he had was a big play for like 20 yards. He had the touchdown at the end where he goes up and sort of mosses Corey Ballantyne on the play. He had a couple other nice receptions. He had a nice block on the outside on a run. I think it was A.J. Dillon to the left. I think it was Dillon to the left, but a really, really nice night by Christian Watson as well. All right, some other miscellaneous notes from practice. As I mentioned earlier, the 2-minute drill for the ones started with a botched exchange between Jordan Love and Josh Myers. That is the 5th fumbled snap and exchange by the offense so far in practice. This is practice number 8 now. 5th missed snap. 3 with Jordan Love at quarterback, 2 with the backups at quarterback. But the bigger thing, the center on every single one of those snaps, Josh Myers. So if you want to know why Zach Tom might be getting some looks at center, that could be a piece of it. As I mentioned the other day, I cannot tell you and look you in the eye and say that Josh Myers had anything wrong to do with any of them. He might have been 100% to blame on all 5. He might have been 0% to blame on all 5. I have no idea. I can't see from the angle that I'm looking at. All I know is that the common denominator between 5 fumbled snaps so far between the quarterback and the center has been Josh Myers. So that'll be something to keep an eye on moving forward and just see if Zach Tom starts getting some more snaps at the center position. Matt LaFleur talked after practice. He was asked about Dontavian Wicks. This was his quote, "He does an unbelievable job. As a matter of fact, we were talking yesterday with Coach Vrabel, the wide receivers coach, and Vrabel talking about how many text messages he gets every night from Wicks in terms of he's always studying. In the limited action we've seen where he's done some very impressive things." So they've been very impressed with Dontavian Wicks. He's a fantastic route runner. Unfortunately, on this night, his biggest play was he had a catch over the middle. Now, It was a bang bang play, so he gets a catch over the middle. This was in a live period. He gets hit hard by Benny Sapp. The ball goes flying backwards, and Tariq Carpenter ends up with the ball. It could have been a catch and a fumble, and Carpenter comes up with it. The ball never hit the ground. Or it could have been a non-catch, and then the ball stayed in the air, and it's an interception for Tariq Carpenter. Either way, that was a poor play by Wicks. He needs to find a way to come down with that catch and certainly not let it go where it could end up in either an interception or a fumble. But overall, you can tell Dontavian Wicks has some really fun wiggle to him. He's a really nice route runner. He knows how to gain separation. That's going to be a play that he needs to clean up a little bit, though. But some very strong, encouraging words from Matt LaFleur on Dontavian Wicks. Your starting kick return unit, Tariq Carpenter, Isaiah McDuffie, Patrick Taylor, and then Innis Gaines and the inside linebacker, Wilson. Sorry, my bad on the name there. But yeah, Eric Wilson? I don't know why I'm confused for all of a second. But Tariq Carpenter, Isaiah McDuffie, Patrick Taylor, Eric Wilson, and Innis Gaines. And then Tucker Kraft at the next line of the return with Tyler Davis and Luke Musgrave on the right. And then Jonathan Owens and Corey Ballantyne, the next group, and then Keyshawn Nixon was the returner. So those were your 11 on the starting kick return unit. And then the first gunners were Keyshawn Nixon and Rudy Ford. The second gunners were Innis Gaines and Corey Ballantyne. Deuce Watts, I thought, had a very nice night with some impressive catches, both in one-on-ones and a team drill. He had one that was really behind him on a team drill that needed to be because of where the zone was, but he caught it behind him and continued upfield, so that was a nice play. Thought that was the best practice for Deuce Watts. There were a ton of penalties on the day, mostly on the offense, so that's going to have to get cleaned up. Your number 2 offensive line was Rasheed Walker, Sean Ryan, Cole Schneider, Empey, and then Caleb Jones. And then some undrafted free agents who are starting to make some names for themselves. Emmanuel Wilson, the running back, had a really nice catch in the flat in a red zone period. I thought that was a really impressive play. He had a couple really nice runs as well. And then Keyshawn Banks off the edge has had some extra pressures as of late. That's been impressive. And then Jimmy Phillips, 2 back-to-back plays, a big run stuff for a loss, and then got out to the outside on another play. That was like a tackle at the line of scrimmage. Those are some 3 undrafted free agents that have really been impressive as of late, and I would keep my eye on them. Probably more practice squad guys, but you never quite know. And Emmanuel Wilson, Keyshawn Banks, Jimmy Phillips playing some good football right now. Tariq Carpenter, not only did he have that one play that was sort of either a fumble or an interception that he ended up with. Carpenter, by the way, and after practice called it an interception, so I guess we can just go with that. But he had that, and then he also had another interception earlier in practice. I believe it was from Clifford, where he threw it over the middle. Carpenter dropped back into coverage, and he dropped a very similar interception in practice the other day. He held on to that one, and then, of course, had the either fumble or interception later. So a couple big turnovers for Tariq Carpenter. And then last but not least, Carrington Valentine may just have had another pick 6 if the quarterback was actually accurate on the play. Not sure which. I know it wasn't Love. It was one of the 3 backups. I forget which one it was on the play, but he jumped another route and the ball just ended up going wide. If it was on target, I think Valentine has another pick 6, and we're probably talking a lot more about Carrington Valentine. But that guy plays with swagger. He knows how to jump a route, and he is going to come up with some plays if he ends up on the field. Watch him in preseason. Would not be surprised if some backup quarterbacks end up throwing some balls right to Carrington Valentine in these preseason games. All right, that is going to do it for me today. A ton of interesting stuff to go over. I hope you enjoyed this full breakdown from Family Night. I'll be right back here tomorrow with another episode, so you're not going to want to miss that. Make sure you're subscribed. If not, what are you waiting for? But I'll see you tomorrow, and until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.